Coming up today, the best race finish we have seen in years. As well as the men's and women's Amstel Gold Races, we've also got the Tour of Turkey, Brabanste Pijl, and a new world hour record. But we can only start with one race. And let's get this bit out of the way immediately. This week's GCN Rider of the Week is...
100 metres, it's Alaphilippe who takes off on the right hand side. Look at Van der Poel going from behind though. Look at Van der Poel on the left hand side. Mathieu Van der Poel's going to do it. Mathieu Van der Poel, this is incredible. I have never ever seen anything like this in my life.
Mathieu Van der Poel. He has just elevated himself to Dutch royalty, winning the biggest race in the Netherlands in the Dutch champions jersey and white shorts, with one of the best race finishes you will ever see. It's hard to know where to even start with this one, but let's go back to 44 Ks to go. That was when Van der Poel couldn't hold his excitement any longer. Going on the attack, Gorka Izaguirre the only man able or willing to join him. His father, Adri, who's been trying to tell his son to conserve a bit more energy, must have had his head in his hands at that particular point. It was, let's face it, a fairly novice move, although we shouldn't be too critical about that. After all, this was his first participation in the race and only the fourth World Tour event he's ever ridden. Regardless, after Izaguirre was told to stop working, they were both caught 6 kilometres later, just before what is often the decisive part of that race, the Kruisberg climb. That is where Deceuninck Quickstep accelerated and Alaphilippe made his attack, joined a little later by Fuglsang. Nobody was able to follow them, not least, quite understandably, Van der Poel, who was paying for the efforts he'd already made. Despite the efforts of Kwiatkowski and Trentin behind, nobody was able to catch the front two. With 2.5 Ks to go, they had close to half a minute's lead. The win was theirs. It was just a matter of which one of them would take it. And then Fuglsang sat on. Quite rightly so, in my personal opinion. The Dane is no match for Alaphilippe in a sprint finish, so his only chance of victory was to make the Frenchman do the work and hope that that would sap his energy enough to give him a chance at the finish. Only Alaphilippe wasn't prepared to do it all on his own. The pace slowed, the gap fell. It was tantalising stuff. Kwiatkowski, who dropped Trentin, closed in and eventually caught the leading duo. And then, as we got a long shot from the finish line, we could see another group in the distance. The win was still between the three of them, surely. That gap couldn't be closed, could it? Well, we all know the answer to that now. Absolutely incredible. 29 years after his dad won it, 18 years after the last Dutch winner, Van der Poel did the impossible. And what makes it even more incredible is that when you look back at the last 10 Ks of the race, he did it almost all by himself. He went from group to group, collecting passenger after passenger, and even in the last kilometre, it was only him doing the work on the front. You could easily say that you will never witness anything like that again in a bike race, but I wouldn't put anything past Van der Poel. He's basically a phenomenon. Now, I do want to give a very special mention to Simon Clarke. The Aussie from EF Education First finished a very creditable second, but his ride has been somewhat overshadowed by the furore surrounding Van der Poel. That is Clarke's best result in a one-day race of this calibre, and at 32, I'd say he's in the best form he's ever been. Chapeau. Fuglsang ended up with 3rd place on the day, but he and Alaphilippe must be wondering what could have been. Now, before we finish with the men's Amstel, one more little stat for you. In placing 65th on Sunday, that was the first time that Alejandro Valverde has finished outside the top 50 in any race or any stage of any race since the 7th of May 2016. A changing of the guard? Maybe so. When Valverde won his first pro race, Van der Poel was 8 years old. Now, the women's Amstel Gold Race was so enthralling that it left me wondering how the men's race would live up to the excitement. Thankfully, we ended up with 2 incredible races on the day. In the women's though, the first of the big guns to make a move was Lizzie Deignan. She was making her return to competition after giving birth to her daughter Orla last September. She went with 40 Ks remaining. After she was caught, the next to go were Spratt, Longo Borghini and Katie Hall, who was making her debut at the race. It was a strong trio, but they would eventually be caught on the penultimate ascent of the Kouwberg, much of that down to Marianne Vos, who was a woman on a mission yesterday. On the finishing lap, Longo Borghini went again. It's actually been almost 2 years since she's taken a win in a pro race, and for a while it looked as though she had enough to be victorious yesterday. However, she was firstly caught by Spratt and Moolman Pasio in the closing kilometres, and then by a select group behind on the final climb. There, we witnessed the almighty explosion of power from Katia Niewiadoma. It really was quite something. Even the great Marianne Vos was unable to match her. However, it was still mightily close at the finish. Annemiek van Vleuten, who you'll remember broke the heart of Van der Breggen at last year's La Course, was closing in on the pole, but this time it wouldn't quite be enough. Niewiadoma took her first win at the race and the 15th of her career so far. Now, it does already feel like a distant memory, but on Wednesday we had what is often seen as the warm-up race for Amstel, the Brabantse Pijl or the Flèche Brabançonne. It gave us a glimpse of what was to come in many respects. Van der Poel just couldn't help himself. He attacked multiple times before ending up in a group with Michael Matthews, last year's winner Tim Wellens, and Julian Alaphilippe. Van der Poel found himself in the worst possible position on the front into the home straight. But it didn't matter. He sprinted from the front and nobody was able to come around him. Alaphilippe finished second, and in fact he's won every one-day race he's done this year, except for the ones where Van der Poel has also started. In the women's event, Sophie de Voost took the first victory of her professional career, getting the better of Marta Cavalli and Corinne Rivera in a sprint from a group of 6. On to the boards now. 10 attempts on Bradley Wiggins' 2015 hour record of 54.526 kilometres have come and gone with nobody managing to go any further. Step forward, Lotto Soudal's Victor Campenaerts. There had been much anticipation and excitement around the European time trial champion having a crack at this record, and the Belgian headed to Aguascalientes in Mexico to make his attempt on what is known as one of the toughest records in cycling. He just seemed to find his groove right from the off though, and added an extra 563 metres to the record. With each new record usually comes a flurry of big name attempts, so who will be next? The record now stands at 55.089 kilometres. Back onto the road now, as the other World Tour event that took place last week was the Tour of Turkey. Predominantly flat, it attracted some of the world's best sprinters, many of whom were using it to prepare for the upcoming Giro d'Italia. Taking the spoils on the first 2 stages was a man who's been snubbed for that very race by Bora Hansgrohe, Sam Bennett. He's certainly making a case to have a start at the Tour de France, particularly with Peter Sagan a long way from his best right now. On stage 3, we were given a lesson in manoeuvring through the bunch by Fabio Jakobsen of Deceuninck Quickstep. Here you can see how far down he was and how boxed in he was, but somehow he was guided through the mess by his teammate, bumped through a couple of riders, launched his sprint, collected a flag from the crowd at the side of the road in the last 200 metres, and then raised his arms aloft, complete with flags still attached. The best flagged ride he'll ever have. Boom, boom. Caleb Ewan took 2 stage wins for Lotto Soudal, both of them on very tough finishes, and the second, which came on the final day, was almost a solo victory. Jakobsen just about managed to finish on the same time, but behind there was a 4-second gap to third placed Bennett. The GC though was all about stage 5, finishing on a climb to Kartipi. 12 Ks at 9%. For a few moments towards the top, it looked as though 19-year-old Remco Evenepoel, just out of the junior ranks, would take his first win as a pro. He'd launched an attack with about 5 Ks remaining, but it was a little too exuberant. He'd ended up finishing 4th on the stage, which was still mightily impressive. Winner on that day though, and the overall classification, was Felix Großschartner of Bora Hansgrohe. What a great week they had all round. Before we finish, a quick look back at our poll from last week's Racing News Show. Is Philippe Gilbert the best classics rider of his generation? Well, 79% of you said yes, although I do have a feeling I know who the best classics rider of the next generation is going to be. Now, unfortunately, we have to finish with news that one of the best riders of his own generation has sadly passed away. Belgian Patrick Sercu was one of, if not the best track rider of all time. Partnering with Eddy Merckx, they won 15 six-day events, and in total, over his career, he took 1,200 wins. Most of those did come on the track, but he also took 6 stages of the Tour de France and 13 at the Giro d'Italia. After retiring from competition, Sercu took to organising road races and also became the director of the Ghent 6-Day, which is where I had the pleasure of meeting him back in 2013. The cycling world has lost a great. Rest in peace, Patrick. Right, that's all for this week's show. Next week we'll have the Trobro Lyon, which takes place today, plus Flèche Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Both of those you can find highlights of over on our Facebook page soon after they finish. We'll also have the Tour of the Alps, which starts today, and if you're in North or South America, you'll be able to get live coverage out on Facebook with myself and Marty McDonald. Chris Froome and Vincenzo Nibali are amongst those competing in what is a notoriously tough race. I'm off to prepare my notes for that, so I shall leave you with the following video. Who has got the fastest sprinting position? Is it Greipel, Cavendish, Ewan or Opie? Find out down here as GCN recruits some external expertise in order to do some proper science.